You are now listening to Carly's Couch.
I'm Carly.
And I'm Lex.
In this podcast, we discuss a wide array of topics about life and how to live your best life,
whatever that looks like for you.
Hope y'all enjoy.
We've talked about forgiving others, when to leave, conflict resolution, therapy, etc. But this week, we talk about how you actually forgive yourself.
So listeners, hope you're having a great day. And I'm wondering, how do you feel about self-forgiveness? Is that something like you think about a lot? Carly, is that something you feel like you think about a lot?
Absolutely not. The first time I ever really thought about it was last year when I traveled. I was in Mexico and I was doing a meditation, and it was a writing meditation by Alexandra on Insight Timer, which is like my favorite meditation app. And it was like a letter to yourself about self-forgiveness. And so she gives you prompts and you just write. And boy, when I tell you the waterworks were flowing, I was crying so much, and I had never thought about it. And I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to like this, but I tried it. And I was like, man, there really is something to forgiving yourself.
What were the questions like that you were really feeling it like that?
Man, to be honest, I don't even remember. I just know she was calling you to recall moments like when you let yourself down, or when you chose other people or other situations over yourself, and to forgive yourself. Like those situations that we don't even know we're actually carrying around or harboring emotions from, that because we don't think about it. We don't think about forgiving ourselves every day, but you know, there is something to that in those moments, like when we didn't know any better and we hurt ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it's easier to forgive other people than to forgive yourself?
I think so, because we're in a practice. Like, we're taught to forgive other people. We talk about it more. We have more conversations. Oh, you need to forgive them. That's your cousin or your friend or your brother or whatever. But we're not taught not only how to deal with emotions, obviously, but also we're not taught to forgive ourselves. Like, that's not a conversation people have.
But maybe also because we do tend to have a lot of trouble forgiving ourselves, or because it's easier to tell, like, you're not really forgiving yourself. Maybe that can also mean that we don't really forgive others, even when we say we are, or when we think we are. So perhaps being able to forgive yourself is important for multiple reasons, because, you know, you need to do that for yourself. But also, I feel like if you can't forgive yourself, or if you never have thought about what forgiveness looks like for you, that may also change what you think about with like forgiving others and the whole like shebang as well.
I think there's something to that, and I think you're right. Is like how people are like, oh, you can't really love other people till you learn how to love yourself, which I think can become problematic if you're applying it like very verbatim, like directly, like this is exactly what it means. But I think in forgiving yourself, that does help you actually be able to forgive other people and create space. And so I think it's something we should all practice.
Yeah. And I think that forgiving yourself is just another one of those practices where you can just get like a lot of weight off your shoulders. Whereas, you know, many of the topics we've talked about, it's like, oh, when doing these things, just kind of helps you feel a little bit more light and more free and a little bit less anxious, etc. And so I think topics like self-forgiveness may be like one of those sneaky things where you didn't realize you weren't doing it, or didn't realize you needed to do it until you really think about it. And so for you to say that, you know, you were answering some prompts and some questions, and that really is what triggered or sparked it. Maybe similar to today, let's talk about like what are some of those things that you may need to forgive yourself for, so that we can even identify if maybe this is something that could take a lot of that weight off of our shoulders.
Man, because anything that can make my day more peaceful and more light and more enjoyable and make me feel good, that's like what I'm here for in this phase of my life, and hopefully forever. So,
but it's messy though, right? Also,
oh
like,
God.
So it's like, oh yeah, these are things that make us feel better, but they suck, I think, doing it, or like in the, you know, processing of all of it, which is why, you know, being avoidant, like I know my style, you don't do some of these things sometimes, or we avoid conflict, or etc. Or if you're anxious, you may avoid doing things like this. So I think that, you know, these processes aren't sweet, but, or, you know, it might not feel great to go through it. But as most things, hopefully at the end, we'll feel better.
Yeah, and I think it's necessary. If you're never excavating into all this bullshit that you're carrying around, like shit gets heavy. So let's get a little bit lighter. It's not fun all the time. It's not always pretty, and not always stuff you want to post on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, but it's stuff that's necessary to get down to the truest version of you and help you like be able to really enjoy life. I think a lot of times the things we carry around keep us from that subconsciously.
So let's do what you did, Carly. Then let's kind of like, as we're going through some of these, write down any ideas or not ideas, memories, perhaps things you think of, or what comes to mind. Like, try to write it down, write it in your phone, or if you have a piece of paper or a journal, write them down. But Carly, what are some things that we need to forgive ourselves for? Like, let's like jog through some of the topics, and if we can think of any instances of ourselves, so that we can kind of be going through this as well.
I think the first one, even though it's forgiving ourselves, is in moments where we chose somebody else over ourselves, whether it was for whatever reason, a relationship where we chose their happiness over our own, or our parents, if you were raised like you raised your parents essentially, or even your best friend, like you chose to keep quiet on things that hurt your feelings to essentially satiate somebody else's feelings. Like, anytime you chose somebody else over yourself, I think is a big place that you can start when forgiving yourself.
And I think one good way to identify if you feel like there's anybody you've chosen over yourself is to think about the names of people that you hold resentment for. And so I would think about like, who do I resent a little bit in my life? Just kind of going through from family members to romantic partners, any friends. And when you write those names down, it may be when you really look at it that you had done a little bit more for them, or overextended, let them cross boundaries, etc., which is usually the types of things I would say that cause resentment.
Absolutely.
So that would be a key there. So like with that, I would think about probably a couple family members, or I would think about a couple of other people, but then I can also recognize that, oh man, I resented them because I was thinking a certain thing, or I was overextending, or I was kind of doing something for which I can be like, man, I should forgive myself for having lived in a way because I thought somebody else wanted that, or was putting somebody else before myself.
So anywhere you have resentment, take a moment and think about that. I'm sure, at least for me, a couple situations came directly to mind, so I'm sure there's stuff for other people.
There's also times in our past where we just didn't really know any better, or we didn't act upon knowing better, whether you made a mistake or did some kind of action or said something, whereas now you're like, oh man, if I knew a little bit more, or I recognize now where that was wrong back then, or if you whether you blame it on your youth or whatever, there's always been times we didn't really know better and we made the wrong decision. So those are things that we can forgive ourselves for.
And that can be from like looking for love in all the wrong places. If because I know that's something I definitely had to forgive myself for, like when I was growing up, because I didn't know that. I thought attention was love, and so it put me in a lot of situations where I ended up getting hurt, and so there was a lot of stuff to heal there for me. But also just like how you treated people, you didn't trust them, or you cut people off, or you wilded out on them, like whatever it was. Just think about those moments like where you weren't in your right mind necessarily, and just forgive yourself for what happened.
Yep. And then there's some times where we've made certain decisions because of survival, whether you really had to do a thing or thought you needed to do a thing. For me, I would say things that fit into that could scale from like stealing something, like if you just didn't have no food or was low on money, to even making decisions where it's like you might be hanging out with the wrong type of person because you didn't really have nowhere else to be at that time, or there was a time that I was in between my apartments, and so I had to leave one, but then the other one wouldn't be ready until like a couple weeks. So then I end up kind of staying with people, and it's like basically being a kind of like a homosexual that we laugh about online, where it's like, I don't really want to be hanging out with this person like that, but I really do kind of need somewhere to be. But looking back, it's like, man, I could have made a better decision about who to hang out with, so I didn't have to like try to have to watch my back or kind of watch my space, or move a certain way. So there's lots of decisions that we've made out of survival that when you look back on, you kind of can resent that as well, or regret those, and you can forgive yourself for that.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. Like even staying in a relationship too long, or staying at a job that you freaking hated because you needed that bread. Like there's a lot of places that we have room to forgive ourselves. Another one is being self-sacrificing or people pleasing. And I think at least for me, I more often judge myself when I notice people pleasing behaviors, or even if I look back on what I used to do or how I used to be with people and I'm like, damn, why was I like that? And instead of looking at myself in judgment, it can be an opportunity to grow. Like, yo, why was I doing that? You know, what was I needing that I thought that was what was going to get me there? And then forgiving myself for that.
Yeah, and I think that reflects the first thing we said about putting other people over yourself as well. Forgive yourself when you've messed up or failed in your eyes. I was having a conversation last night where somebody was kind of feeling like they were failing at things. And it's like, no, you know, as a friend, like I could remind them of all the things that they've done successfully, and that not to confuse failing at something with you're in progress and in motion. You know, things take time to unfold. But there's times if you look back in your life where you can rightly say like, I messed up. I didn't show up for this test back in college, or I didn't finish school, or, you know, there's things that we can call failures, but you can forgive yourself and kind of recognize that life is life and be able to move forward from those types of things as well.
Mm-hmm. Another one is if you've hurt people that you love, and this can be in any capacity, call them out their name, wasn't vulnerable enough in a situation, didn't hear them or listen, wasn't present, like whatever it was where you might still feel kind of bad about, you know, not being there for your best friend, or choosing yourself over somebody else, or even like calling somebody out their name when y'all were fighting and you feel really bad about it. Those become moments where you can grow and realize, you know, that those mistakes don't define you, but that you do need to forgive yourself for what happened.
Yeah, I actually have too many examples of this one, whether it's like physical, mentally, like a few different ways. Like sometimes you like freak out and like go off on somebody. And I've done that before for sure. And then felt really, really bad because like of how they reacted or processed it, or just for myself, like, oh man, I hate that I like kind of snapped or got out of character. But also in this instance, I think forgiving yourself is cool, but it is really important to reach out to that person, or like make sure in forgiving yourself, you're not just trying to make yourself feel better for something that somebody else is, you know, should still have a problem with or could still have a problem with as well. So note that with something like that, I think that there's a part two for sure in reconciling with that person, whether or not they forgive you or not. So you still, of course, have to forgive yourself. But I feel like in those instances, if you really do feel bad about hurting somebody, that's something that you can also reach out to them and talk about as well.
Mm-hmm. And the best apology is change behavior also. So making sure that you're doing the things necessary to not continuously do that or abuse that person in that way or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Another reason you may need to forgive yourself is self-destructive habits, whether you are a self-harmer or you abuse any kind of drink, drugs, food, exercise. Sex. I feel like we can abuse, sex, relationships. We can abuse a lot of things in our lives, or we can become addicted to a lot of different things, or just have a lot of habits that aren't really the best for us. And we know that, but they're comfortable, or we fall into it, whatever that may be. You can forgive yourself around those things as well.
Mm-hmm. And then negative self-talk. I think that we are often our own worst critic, and the way we talk to ourselves, at least my voice in my head be talking to me crazy sometimes. And so I think we need to forgive ourselves for those instances when we do that, and not just become this vicious cycle of beating ourselves up because we're beating ourselves up, because that's very counterproductive. And so forgiving yourself for all of those negative ways that you are talking crazy to yourself.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like the next couple are pretty similar and are reflective of a couple of things we've said as well. But self-sabotaging yourself, which can have to do with what you're saying to yourself as well as what you do to kind of prove your narrative in your mind, right? And then in general, for not being yourself or addressing your real needs, because you feel like you need to be loved or accepted, you're kind of changing who you are, or you're acting in a way that doesn't allow you to receive what you really want out of life. That is your life. So again, kind of making sure that we're putting ourselves first, that we're acknowledging ourselves. A lot of times, you know, not being in the right space there is causing us to do things or say things that we then, you know, get certain repercussions from and feel bad about, and need to forgive ourselves for. So I think also in all of this, you have to really think about where you really messed up, or like what is really the issue. For a lot of these, I can see things like boundaries, or maybe it's your self-esteem, or, you know, there's different kind of core not values, well, I don't know what you would call them, but kind of like some core things that a lot of this is pointing back to, where, yeah, perhaps, where we can kind of see like, all right, this is where I need to forgive myself for kind of being weaker in certain areas, or this is where I need to exercise and strengthen myself and grow my practice so that I'm stronger in particular areas. So in self-forgiveness and forgiving yourself, think about what those areas might be where you really need to spend a little extra time.
And I think all of these exercises, like thinking about, situations where you might have done these things or lashed out on somebody or picked somebody else, whatever is going on, all of this fruit is indicative of the roots. And so these present an opportunity to get to that core need, that core, whatever core insecurity, like really whatever's going on, so that you can heal it and continue to forgive yourself for having that too. It's like we didn't come out the womb with these things. We were very much socialized to have them through life experience, through society, through whatever. And it's like the unlearning and the unraveling of all of those things to get back to the core of us. And so using this as an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and for a lot of this, it seems like making other people's opinions more valid than yours, or viewing other people's approvals as important, kind of seems like why we kind of do a lot of these things, which to Carly's point is kind of life. Like for whatever reasons, we've like grown to put other people in front of us in certain ways, different ways. And so it's so funny that I feel like life is about like raveling that back, which once you go there, it's really hard. It's really hard to change your mindset and your perspective on a lot of these things. So definitely have some grace with yourself, but it's important to get back to that space because now you're really like aligned. Now you're kind of living more for yourself, and you're being more honest with yourself if you acknowledge those places where you need to forgive yourself, and everything just, I think, gets more aligned.
And I think that's why this is so important, because if we don't ever address these issues, then this underlying insecurity or need or want or yearning, whatever we have, can be the root of our self-sabotage or of the negative self-talk or of these limiting narratives that very much impact our daily decisions and our lives and the reason that we are where we are. And so it's like we got to start from the very beginning to start fixing all of that stuff to get to where we want to be.
Mm-hmm. And again, I feel like you may not even recognize that you need to forgive yourself for some things. But some things you can kind of feel guilt and shame about. Others, it's not really until you answer those questions and realize, or talking to a therapist or something like that. I know recently in one of my sessions with a therapist, it kind of made me realize in what places I actually did feel like a shame, or, some place where it wasn't really about an outside thing, but it was about myself and I didn't really realize it. So sometimes you need help identifying like where you need to focus these things. But it's important because whether you're walking around knowing you have the shame or not, you got to get that weight off your shoulders. So to move on from that, and I think moving on means to make better decisions. So like all these decisions we're talking about that you made or didn't put yourself first, now you're moving forward in a different way. And I think that's really what it's all about, even if it's like in one space, at a time. I think it takes a while.
And I think that's the best way to practice. One step, one thing at a time, because it can be a lot and it can be overwhelming. But practicing this self-compassion and this kindness and this gentleness with yourself also radiates out into all the rest of your relationships, into your interactions with other people, into how you show up for your friends and in your relationships. And that just makes the world a better place, like one thing at a time.
What is self-forgiveness not, or what does it not do?
I think... and this goes back to like forgiving yourself for hurting people that you love. It's not letting yourself off the hook. So self-forgiveness is not letting yourself off the hook for all of the bad decisions that you made. That's what I want it to be. It's not being like, you know what? It don't even matter. I forgave myself. We over that now. It's like, nah, dog. That's not what self-forgiveness is. You still have to reconcile with that person and exhibit change behaviors. But it is, forgiving yourself for that poor lack of judgment. Mm-hmm.
It's basically like all the same things too that don't happen when you ask for forgiveness for somebody, I guess. Like, you can't just be like, well, I asked for your forgiveness, or I said I'm sorry, so we good. So it's the same thing with yourself. So it also doesn't mean that you continue to tolerate those behaviors. Of course, you can forgive yourself and you still may have difficulties with certain things, but, it's kind of like, okay, let's continue to call yourself out and continue to show that self-forgiveness to yourself, while also kind of trying to hopefully figure out, what is the solution for, getting better in that space.
Mm-hmm. So self-forgiveness is acknowledging what happened, owning your piece of it and being willing to move forward, knowing that although you did that, that doesn't define you, and also committing to, you know, making better decisions in the future, more informed, you know, more kind, more compassionate decisions.
What does it mean to say that it doesn't define you? Or when we say like your mistakes don't define you, because I feel like people say that a lot.
So what I would say is, like, for example, I like if you get into a fight with like your partner and you call them out of your name, and let's say it's never happened before, this is the first time, that doesn't define you. You're not now an abuser who always does this and always does this. You're not defined by that one moment. And so that's what I mean. Like, you're not being defined by that. It's about how you choose to operate once that happens. Like, we all make mistakes.
What if you have done the same thing like over and over? Because I think there are some things where it's like, you know, that is a problem for a person, or, you know, that's their go-to thing, and they do it over and over, or they have this issue. What does it mean to say your mistakes don't define you in an instance like that? Maybe like they don't have to define you.
Yeah, they don't have to, but I would also say if it's something that's continued at a certain point, it's a choice, and it might actually define, your choices do define you, not your mistakes necessarily. But I'm saying if you're continuing to, let's just say, call your partner out of their name, like, that's an issue, and that does make you an abuser. You know what I mean? Verbally, at least. And so it's like, how can you make better decisions to change that? How can you actually reconcile that? Because can you forgive yourself over something that you continue to do? No, I don't think so. That's a choice. That's an active choice to do that.
Yeah, but I think about different things like alcoholics and like, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of spaces where that main thing that you might feel like, oh man, like I really need to forgive myself for this. Sometimes it can be like one of those serious things, or a thing where it does feel like you don't have control there. So yeah, and I'm not trying to necessarily be contrary, but just thinking like those really hard things where it's really like you keep doing that, you know, but it's like, you know better. I feel like we've all kind of had a thing sometimes where it's like, you know better, but like you just keep falling into something.
Yeah, and I would say in those instances, like, I still would say you're not defined by that per se, in the sense if you're trying to get better or trying to figure out why you do it.
But you have to be real and acknowledge, like,
yes,
I'm an abuser, or like I'm addicted to this, or I'm whatever. And then I don't know, maybe that's where it's like we kind of maybe avoid that part, and then we don't really get to the forgiveness as much, or you don't get to move forward because we're too busy maybe denying or not accepting like what the problem really is.
Yeah, I think the first step is acknowledging and owning up to that. Like, yeah, you know what? I do this. I am running from this, or whatever it is. Not saying that it makes you less than, but it's like you can't address what you're not facing. And the moment you choose to face it, then you can address it and forgive yourself for it and get to the root of it and try to heal from it. And I'm saying this very much understanding that it's not easy, especially for people who have addictions to drugs, to sex, to alcohol, to whatever, and being very close to some alcoholics, like in my family, and people who have been addicted to substances. And so saying that, knowing well, it's really, really hard, and it sounds easy to acknowledge it and own up and heal yourself, and it's not. It's very much not, especially if you're that deep into something.
And then that whole forgiving yourself might seem like a cycle over and over, and then I feel like you might get to a space where you're just like, you know, kind of giving up on it type thing. So I think it's important for us to for sure go over the process of how you forgive yourself, because if you can at least acknowledge and get real with what some of those things are, ask yourself some of those questions from the beginning, now it's to a point where it's like, all right, what do I actually kind of do now with this information?
It's like, so, okay, you acknowledged it. Now what's up? What can we do? And I think that running through those questions, maybe doing that meditation with Alex L, like doing different things where you take a look at your life, can help you to practice and help you heal. And so I would say maybe start with listing exactly what is hurting. Like if you didn't do something, or if you regret something that you did, and then just take a moment to notice like what comes up. So for example, like I noticed that, man, I didn't take that job and move. And then now I'm feeling a little bit of resentment towards myself because I feel stuck and like I'm boxed in and like I let myself down, and just listing out exactly what's hurting you and then noticing the feelings that come up. And then once you feel all of that, then you're able to explore those decisions that led to those events, decisions, those moments that you're regretting or that you're feeling a lot of anger for. And then you can reflect back and see how it feels.
Or you may need to explore your perspective around the thing too. Because so again, going back to that example from yesterday, if a person feels like, oh man, I failed because I haven't like finished a thing or I haven't got to my goal yet. And it's like, all right, you can notice those feelings, etc. Maybe it's more about exploring your perspective and recognizing, you know, how far you have come, the things you've done in the past that you finished, etc. And like reframing a little bit more there. Because sometimes it's like, sure, we did do things for sure that we need to forgive ourselves for our patterns. But then a lot of the times it's just like, we need to forgive ourselves for this line of thought or like this pattern of thinking where you really actually didn't necessarily do a thing wrong, but the way you're thinking about it is making you kind of in this anxious cycle.
I think that that's big. And I think it's also a good thing to notice that it's okay to disappoint yourself or to let yourself down. But in taking strength and knowing that you're going to make more informed and the best decisions you can in the moment moving forward. You're not always going to get it right, but that it's okay sometimes to let yourself down and that you have to let that go so you can continue to make better decisions in the future.
Mm-hmm. And then once you've identified, like, what are these places where I need to forgive myself? You make a choice where you're saying, all right, am I really going to forgive myself, or am I going to keep bringing this up? Just like with other people, you know, when you be like, oh yeah, I forgive you. And then it be hurting. You still be thinking about it. You still be mad and you keep bringing things up and keep bringing things up. I think we do that to ourselves too. And so you have to decide to choose to sit those things down. But also, I guess, is there anything else to how you do that? Or do we just maybe kind of notice the thought and then just be like, nope, which always feels like constant aerobics with another person as well. But like, you know, constant aerobics to notice a thing and be like, nope, not going to go down that road. Not going to think about that.
Well, I think it's practice, right? And I don't know if there's a definitive answer, but it's like, all right, so I'm going to forgive myself for that dumbass decision that I feel like I made. Mm-hmm. And but you also be honest with yourself. Like, if you know you're not done beating yourself up over it, don't lie and say you are. Just like know that you're going to be sitting in that disappointment or that frustration for a little bit longer. But if you are ready, I think you can practice like the apologizing to yourself. And I know that sounds silly, and I thought it was as well. But when I was doing that meditation and I was actually writing down and apologizing to myself, there is something very cathartic about actually hearing those words to myself, because I've spent a lifetime apologizing to other people for things that I've done, but never to myself. Mm-hmm. And so I think the first step can actually be, once you realize that you don't want to carry these things around anymore, like actually apologizing, writing, saying it, whatever feels good to you. I wrote it and it was great.
Mm-hmm. And also part of making this actual choice is also treating yourself a little bit better in the future as you move forward, because if a lot of these things are around people pleasing or putting other people before yourself, choosing to actually, you know, slow down in moments, with whether you're like in conversation with somebody else or, you know, about to make a decision about something, and really just taking more pause to be more honest with yourself, choose a better decision, choose a different decision. I think sometimes it's easier to frame it like, this today or this week, I'm going to just make decisions differently, or like I'm going to do the other thing besides what I would do, instead of trying to think about it like, oh, what's the best thing to do? Sometimes it's honestly like, all right, you need to just hop out of your instincts. I've done that before, and it was actually pretty cool, where it's like, however you would, you know, answer a text or talk to somebody or say something, just switch it up and just see what happens if you do it differently. That may be something to try, especially if you can identify the space in which something has been happening.
I think that's a great idea. I might actually try that this week, and I challenge y'all to as well. I think part of forgiving yourself also too is like getting to the root. So it's like, why did I make that decision? It's like, oh man, I really was just looking to be loved, and then figuring out ways you can love yourself or feel that without letting yourself down. So thinking about how to make that decision in a different way, and not dwelling there like whenever you fail. So let's say this week I'm like, man, I want to make all my decisions different, and then I don't. You know, one day I'm like, instead of beating myself up, it's like, okay, I can try again tomorrow. Let's try something different tomorrow. Mm-hmm.
And then I think one of the biggest things is how to forgive yourself. Part of that is rejecting shame. So you may be feeling guilty, or you may be feeling kind of shame around things that you feel are your fault, or things that are your fault, stuff from the past, baggage in some form. But recognizing what it's saying about your beliefs, recognizing that that's the past, which does affect and does have a part in the current and the future, but doesn't have to define you, as we said earlier. And really rejecting like the shame that comes from it will allow you to kind of put those bags down. How do we do that though? What else kind of goes into like rejecting that shame and those feelings that come up?
And so I found this interesting differentiation when I was like researching this that I thought was cool, and I want to share because it was new for me. So they're saying it's different. Is guilt and shame are different. So guilt in the moment can be a useful tool to help you understand what you did wrong, why you did it, and how you can fix it and move on. So you feel guilty. Damn, I did this thing. Oh man, I was upset. I took it out on that person. Okay, I can move it forward. Shame is just piling on all of those feelings where you start to carry around that like, oh my God, I disappointed them. I'm going to fail at life. Like I'm this terrible person. So I think a way to reject shame is maybe you do feel guilty. Maybe you did fuck up. Like, maybe that is a very true statement, and you can look at it in a silo and figure out what it is. Or maybe not in a silo and figure out what it is. But shame is whenever things just start to compile and you start to carry those feelings and that energy with you throughout your day. So I think in rejecting shame, it's recognizing that you can feel guilty, you can feel bad about something, you can forgive yourself, and that you don't have to carry around those emotions about it every day.
So would you say that we can reject shame or keep ourselves from becoming kind of like living in a place of shame by dealing with guilt probably more quickly and directly?
Absolutely.
Because to what you said, I think we can typically identify like when we do feel guilty immediately after we've said a thing or done a thing, or and it could be real minute. It could just be like, oh, that you made yourself available when you shouldn't have, like, but you immediately like kind of feel that. To address that in that moment, I can imagine that does help you to start to continue to make better decisions, start to recognize in the moment, where you might have had certain issues, and it can keep that shame from piling up if you don't acknowledge that guilt in the second and then decide to like wallow in it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's deciding not to wallow and deciding to address, which we mentioned at the beginning. If you're not ready to acknowledge things and face them, then this will be really difficult to deal with. So the first step is being willing to face yourself and acknowledge everything that's going on.
And it might be okay too, like the quicker you can catch yourself, like if you feel guilty, like, oh, I told this person I was going to come hang out. And like the moment you're like, yeah, I'm actually not really feeling that you hit them and just say like, hey, by the way, actually, I think I need to just kind of chill. Like the quicker I think you honor yourself, the better you can be, because it's not too late. Like now you don't have to go through the whole, I got to forgive myself or I feel shame or guilt, because you're noticing it in the moment and then actually confronting it head on.
Man, the quicker you honor yourself, I think that has been the underlying theme of the past couple episodes. And I really I love it when a plan comes together. I really enjoyed that. So the quicker you can honor yourself, the less likely you are to carry around shame and allow these things to continue in your life because you're facing them head on.
Yep, gotta be real with yourself and honor yourself, because then you can't even honor yourself if you don't know what your needs are or trying to act like you don't have any. So I think that's where like those two things go together, to where now you're making moves and you're saying things and acting in a way where you don't necessarily have to forgive yourself, or not as much as you may by kind of trying to live outside of yourself.
Ooh, I'm a little hype off the end of this episode. I want to hear from y'all. Hit us at Carly's Couch on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok this week. Let us know if any of this stood out to you. What are you forgiving yourself for? If you're trying any of these exercises, or if you're trying to make decisions in a different way this week. And then this week's shout out, we have a shout out this week. So if you're watching the video, I have on some earrings from Brown Girls, BRWNGRLZ, and they are the flyest earrings you'll ever wear. It's a Filipino-owned business founded by Gretchen Carvajal, and it was actually in her dorm room that she founded it, but celebrating Black, Brown, Indigenous, and women of color through art and jewelry, telling our stories, using really cool materials and colors in different ways. And then Brown Girls also provides resources to support BIPOC community organizations, and you can always find those on their website and their Instagram. We'll link everything. But it is Filipino American History Month, and so I thought it'd be cool to shout out a Filipino-owned brand.
Yeah, that is cool. How did you learn about this brand?
So there's a Filipino rapper called Ruby Ibarra. She's awesome. She has a song called Us. So if you want to try that out, try that out.
Try it out.
I I think it was either her or Faith Santia, who's a poet, a Filipino poet, and one of them posted it. And so I went to their website and found them. I was like, oh, that's cool. And y'all got to catch them on their restocks. They about to drop again, but that shit sells out so fast. It took me like 2-3 restocks before I got anything.
Oh, that's good. I like it though when people are running out of stuff. So that's good, at least that you know they're being supported. So check out Brown Girls. It's in the post notes that you can go to that website. And then this week's question for you guys and for us is, Carly, where have you been spontaneous in your life lately, or where do you identify that you could be more spontaneous?
Ooh.
Whichever spectrum or side you feel like you've been on.
I have been more spontaneous with like random adventures in the day. By allowing myself to be a little bit more flexible with my schedule. I've been doing some random shit at random times that I quite enjoy, but I could be more spontaneous. I'm gonna do both because y'all know me. I don't like to listen to directions. In traveling, like I really feel like I just want to get the hell up out of here and just go. So I think that's my next thing. What about you? Where can you or have you been more spontaneous?
I guess I probably have been more spontaneous lately in traveling because I went to a city, and then from that city decided not to come back and go to somewhere else. And while I was in the second place, decided I was going to go somewhere else in a couple weeks from now. So yeah, I've decided, well, I haven't decided. This is how I used to live my life anyway, where like when I did have money, like the most I would do is just be gone. Which isn't super crazy because really the way I see it, I can work from any location. So depending on what the situation is, usually with like food, like, you know, you might spend a little more eating out than cooking, which I don't be doing anyway. So it's like kind of the same. So sometimes I just want to be somewhere different. But also, you know, when I'm somewhere different, and then I want to be somewhere different again. So I might just be running from something. So let me do these self-forgiveness exercises this week. But yeah, I've been spontaneous and just like being on the go. And like the last trip before this one, like I didn't even pack. I was at somebody's house and I was looking at my clothes on my back and I was like, I got a t-shirt and I got my laptop. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just go from here. And I literally went on like a 4-day trip with just like my book bag and nothing. So yeah, I'm just on the go these days.
Yeah, that's fun. So where have y'all been more spontaneous, or where can you be more spontaneous? Hit us and let us know. That's a weird word.
You high?
Nah. I'm not.
I ain't gonna wait till the end of the episode to be funny. The edible kicked in. No, I'm sorry. I'm throwing her under the bus because she don't even be doing all that really. She don't even be doing all that. I'm just messing with her. But thank y'all for listening to this week's episode. Let's work on self-forgiveness this week, which kind of goes with that. Was it the last one, the one before last, where we were talking about worrying about yourself? So let's think about, you know, the things we need to do for us, and let's get to it.
Gang, gang. Bye, y'all.
Bye.